Librarians, welcome to episode 310 of School Librarians United. I'm your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian in my 18th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me either on Bluesky at SLU Podcast or on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is at LMS_United. On Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, you can find me at School Librarians United and the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. It is now my pleasure to introduce Learnix, which is our newest podcast sponsor. If you are overwhelmed with managing student research projects and wish there were a better way to guide students towards credible sources and ethical research practices, then you need to try Learnix. Learnix automatically documents your students' research journeys, capturing their searches, website visits, and notes. Learnix then organizes the students' notes, creates perfectly formatted bibliographies, and even generates a snapshot report that reveals key insights into how the student conducts research. With Learnix, you can provide personalized feedback, identify research challenges, and teach information literacy skills more effectively. Visit Learnix.com to learn more and schedule a demo. Enjoy Learnix for the remainder of the year at half the price. And if you mention that you heard about Learnix on School Librarians United, you will receive 20% off your subscription. And now for today's episode, Mentoring and Retaining School Librarians, and my conversation with Becky Calzada. Becky Calzada, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Amy. I'm so excited to be here with you tonight.
Well, and this is your time to shine. We first met along with your co-authors, Val Edwards and Megan Heindel, in episode 289, when you shared your book, Prepared Libraries, Empowered Teams. What a terrific resource for librarians during this time of political upheaval and uncertainty.
I have to agree. It's definitely been a resource that people have said has been very helpful. I know that we're actually doing workshops here and there. Val is doing something in Maryland, I think, in the summer. She's doing a workshop. I'm actually doing not a workshop, but a signing for that book here at South by in March. And so I think the book's getting out and getting a reach. So I really hope it's useful. So.
Well, incredibly timely. And when you get a team of experts together, I put full faith in you're in good hands when you have three professional librarians with as much expertise as you have, writing all the stages of what you should do to not just react, but to anticipate and to be ready.
It's so important, I think, to have like a network. I think that was what they were for me. We all had different experiences. And I think, that's something we reiterate in the book is that, there's not one person that knows everything, right? So you might have a book that gives you an idea or some ideas, but leaning on the network, it's so critical, especially because this work is so hard. It's important work. It's the right work, but having a thought partner along with a great resource, super helpful.
Yes, I do like to borrow other people's brains from now on. And if it can be a school librarian, all the better. So, Madam President, how has your year been going?
My year as AASL President has been going really well. I think it's not been easy. It's been challenging in terms of balancing that work along with my regular day job as a library coordinator. And then, of course, there's just the work that I do with Policy Core and all kinds of things. But it's been really satisfying, I think, to get out and meet so many amazing leaders. And when I say leaders, not just necessarily a chapter leader. So when I go visit a chapter, so for instance, I was in California in January, and yes, I met their executive team, but just meeting all kinds of librarians and hearing their stories, learning from them, increasing the range in terms of the professional learning network. But I think it's been so satisfying to be in community with so many amazing librarians. And so there's something to be said about coming together in fellowship at a conference, but also knowing that there's a network even online via an association like AASL. So I've been really, really pleased.
Well, and you really are an emissary. I learned a great deal from Courtney Pentland about the rotation of states. May I ask, in addition to California, what are some other, you go to primarily the state conferences in order to be that extension and to represent the national AASL at the state level. But what are some other states that you have had an opportunity to visit during your tenure as president of AASL?
So I was in Wyoming earlier this year, and then I'm going to be going to Delaware in the spring, later this spring. I will also be going to Arkansas, and then I also have an opportunity to go overseas, which is kind of a just-in-time sort of thing. So I have had the opportunity to go to Sharjah, which is in the United Arab Emirates. And so AASL is partnering with the Sharjah Book Authority and the Emirate Library Association. And so we have a 2-day workshop for school librarians. And so I'm going to give a keynote, and there are going to be other librarians from AASL there. When I think about the opportunity to be able to share some of the practices that we are doing with them, but then also learning from others, I think is really exciting. So I know Elizabeth Burns is going, Charity Pennington, Todd Burleson, Charlotte Chung. And so we're going to have different workshops that they're going to be sharing their expertise in. And then I believe we're going to get to go visit some school libraries over there. So I'm just excited for the opportunity to share about reading and reading assessment and trends, learning about trends and sharing trends and things that we're doing here, talking about the standards and that kind of thing too. So I think it's a great and exciting opportunity to just, again, be in community with other librarians, and then also learn from them the things that they do, and visit their schools and their libraries, and bring some of that back too.
I was very lucky. I was able to present in Rome at
Ooh.
the International Association of School Librarians, and the visit to the school is always a high point to it. But also meeting school librarians from, in this case, it was all over the world, and just having those conversations. And we really we have our work cut out for us, because I think the world has made some fairly strong assumptions about us, given the messaging that's coming from our political front-facing national government. And so I think it's vitally important that school librarians have opportunities to at least open the eyes of those who want to see all the good things that we are doing here in the United States to support our students in our school libraries. And there is that hope that you're connecting with school librarians and people who want to see the success that we have, and learn from them as well.
Right. I think at the heart of what we do, there we have more in common than we don't. And so when I think about how we all want to support students, whether elementary, middle, or high, we want to help them with their library needs, whether it's in research. I would think that, we might be in different places in the world, but I really believe that we share common challenges, and it's through those opportunities and coming together that we can learn from one another, and then share and expand our network to learn.
Well, we are all quietly jealous of this lovely trip that you have planned. I'm not at all jealous. I'm so excited for you. And I know you'll have an amazing time. And I'm very glad you're going, because I can't think of anybody better to represent us on the international stage.
Thank you.
So do tell us, because, you are very busy. You do have a day job.
I do have a day job. So I am a district library coordinator in Leander, which is northwest of Austin, Texas. And so I oversee 45 school libraries. I am actually down 2 librarians. I had 2 elementary people who left mid-year, but I mean, it just stuff happens, right? But so we're on the hunt for next year. Luckily, I've got some incredible library assistants that I check in quite often. And they are, doing a tremendous job. In my role, I help with hiring, I help with budget distributions, I check in on any new hires. In fact, right now, I'm partnering with my partner and digital coordinator, Lee Howell. We're doing an AI advisory group. So we just started that work this past week. And so we are meeting with over 50 people from across the district, principals, assistant principals, deans of instruction, librarians, teachers, from all levels to kind of get input curriculum people about how we want to leverage AI with our students and be very intentional in how it looks with the work that we do with students. I mean, so there's just all kinds of things that I do. And then there's just I help with my team with professional learning. So just there's never a day that's the same. Today I was on a campus that doesn't have a librarian, so I was helping the instructional coach. She was asking questions about processing books, and so this is what we do. And so she was just fascinated, and it was super. It's just fun because I love to be on a campus too. I don't get to do that often, and so to see kids and help them find books, and they still love the same things like Dogman and Harry Potter, that kind of thing too. But so yeah, it's busy.
It has become, in the past 4 years, I have documented every day. And I have, for me, it's a Google spreadsheet. I have done it. There's several things that motivate me. But one of the things, like you said, is every day is different. So if I'm asked to in any way sort of account for what I do on a daily basis, if somebody calls me in and says, your job's on the line, defend it. I can tell you specifically which grades, which classes, which teachers, which departments. Did it fall under technology? Was this instructional? Was this resources? And we have to be able to do that. And I appreciate your job is not, no one's going to question whether or not you do a job. But as the only librarian in my district, it would not surprise me if, there was somebody decided to cut our budget and, our paras make $19.50 an hour. Well, I have 2 master's degrees, so they would absolutely find, a couple reasons right there to cut some corners. And so, in the interest of self-preservation, how about that? Self-preservation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's good. Well, and then I also think too, it's so easy to get caught up in the administrivia part of work. And yes, that's an important part of the work. Even for me, I mean, I could go down the email trail forever, right? That's a deep rabbit hole. I find that that when you block out the time, like for say, this AI advisory panel, like I have, once a week with my partner, we've got 3 hours blocked out where we're really intentionally planning, reviewing feedback and, curating resources for this work. And so I think that when you are intentional about that, you are also showing the deep work that you're doing that may not be visible. I think we were having this conversation the other day is that, yes, we check out books, we purchase books, but people don't see that part. So how do we make that visible? We block out a calendar saying, I'm going to review my collection development needs or, those kinds of things. So I think, there's a lot to be said for that kind of action where you're documenting and curating, even a thank you from a teacher that says, I appreciate this lesson about XYZ. So yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. I do love the term administrivia. Administrivia, it is, I heard that because really it's along the lines of if it can be resolved in an email, we do not need to sit here and talk about it in a meeting.
Exactly.
And I do remember because I did come from a fixed schedule originally, and in the spaces that I didn't have a class coming, one of my administrators said, put something in those blocks right now. because
Mhm.
whatever people see on your schedule, if they don't see that you have anything, they
Yeah.
will put something in
Mhm.
there for you.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's right.
oh
All
man.
right. That's right. So right. I like weeding,
Oh
shelving
yeah.
books, whatever those things. I mean, it is a part of what you do, but reading the shelves, I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
I totally agree.
that's so true. That's so true. Friends, today's conversation focuses on mentoring and retaining school librarians, a session which you happened to facilitate this past December at School Library Journal Summit in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm curious to know how that all came together because was this a topic that was suggested to you by the organizers of the conference, or is this something that you wanted to specifically address?
So that's a great question. So I have been a part or member of the SLJ advisory board. So they have an advisory board, and if you go to the SLJ Summit website, you'll see the different people that are on there. And so I was invited along with several others. Usually start like early August, maybe even July, talking about what are the things that are rising to the top in terms of topics and that kind of thing. And so different topics are asked, and they make decisions based on what's shared by this board. And so they, of course, have their ideas too. But one of the things we talked about was mentoring, teacher retention, because and it was something actually I mentioned because for me, of the 45, I've probably got a good third that have less than 5 years of experience. And so we can be a pretty stable system when we have somebody in place. Like I think of several of our high school librarians that have been there 10 plus years, right? Maybe even 20 and super sharp, strong. But when they retire, I mean, the vacuum of the void is deep. And so I brought that up as an opportunity to just, can we talk about what people are doing? What are they doing in terms of like recruiting, even? What are they doing in terms of like building capacity in people? Because like, and just like any new teacher or new to profession person, like sometimes I think we give them so much information. It's the fire hydrant situation, and that's not very good either. So kind of, I thought this would be a good topic to bring people together and talk about to just what is everybody doing? Because it looks different everywhere, and why shouldn't we should take some time to share.
This is so incredibly timely. When I think about all of the new hires that we have in my building, most of them are, if it's not their first teaching job, I mean, they have less than 2 or 3. I mean, this is their first job. As somebody who started teaching in 1992, I don't call myself their mentor because nobody has given me that title. I call myself work mom, which I feel is a little more cozy, especially because they're all between 22 and 25. They're the ages of my own children. So I get to be work mom, and that kind of, I don't want to say custodial, like I'm sort of just making sure, checking it, those check-ins, and it's not intrusive. I usually do it under the guise of coffee in my office and candy and ibuprofen, or replacing the paper in the copy machine. But it really is, how are you doing? What's going on? You seem stressed. How is it going this year? I know that you've got a lot of things that are on your plate, like throwing softballs out there so that they can have that invitation to bring, up to the surface. What are some of the things that I might be able to help them with?
Yeah. Well, and I love that because I think um, it can be very overwhelming coming into a system, and it doesn't matter the size, but I think about when you're coming into a system where there's people that already know one another, that already have strong relationships, hopefully, and you're the one person that's new. How do you navigate that? Or maybe you're competent, but yet you've got these relationships. So I think I love that you um, take people under your wing, and it's really also just building relationships because I think that's a big piece in the jobs that we do is that it's important to build relationships with people. Um, we never know what people are going through, and maybe sometimes people make assumptions that everything's fine. I also know too, depending on the individual, I feel like sometimes people believe that it's that you should never say, I need help. And I tell our new hires often, very often, and I see like the first time I sit with them and over again. Do you need anything? I'm here to help you. I don't expect you to know everything. Making sure that that door is always open, whether it's me or to reach out to their mentor, because I think that um, everybody wants to learn. I just think they don't know what to ask, or they don't know what they don't know, whatever those things are. And so just knowing that, hey, this person's making time to check on me, that goes a long way for people. And I think, and people never forget those things. I know I don't. And so I love that you do that, because I also think too, I never, when I work with, when I assign a mentor with a mentee, I never presume that that's going to be the only relationship. Yes, I want them to have somebody to sit with, and that kind of thing too. But I also hope that they're building relationships with other people, and hopefully, and of course, this is specific to my school district because we're pretty big, is to always rotate opportunities when we are meeting, when we are learning, so that others get a chance to meet other people and we get out of our little cliques, hopefully, because new people bring so many incredible ideas. They're fresh out of school. They have the newest learning. And so I just think there's a lot. If you find that person, it can be an incredible relationship that's, reciprocal too.
Well, and especially because in a district as large as yours, there's a good chance that your incoming school librarians are going to be mentored by school librarians. My mentor was one of the teachers in the ELA department, because there wasn't a school librarian in my district. And I think when you recognize that, you do have to be in a very vulnerable place to be willing to work with others. And personally, I have loved connecting with our new hires, because I make it abundantly clear from the onset when I onboard new teachers like I onboard my students. And I just go from a place of, here, I'm just going to tell you everything we can do for you, and you take what you want. And one of the things I've made abundantly clear is, school librarians are like the Switzerland of the building, right? We are blissfully out of the politics and, more importantly, the egos, because there are some ego issues with some of our more veteran, seasoned educators who are convinced that not only do they not need the help of a school librarian, they don't need the help of anybody. And you see these personalities that oftentimes really it's very hard to make inroads. But I'll tell you what, my new hires, they are my favorite people to work with, because they are. I said, listen, you know what? I'm Switzerland, but you know what? I'm not going to let anybody know. Any question you have, you ask me. It is just between us. I'm happy to field any of those questions you may have, but I am Switzerland. I do not have a dog in this fight. I want to work with everybody. I don't care who you are.
I love that. I think you remind me, of course, I've been in a coordinator position for, I think it's this year 14 now, but I remember as a librarian, trying to be that go-between, because I think one of the things that I love about the role of a librarian is, like, we don't do grades, and we support teachers, we support students, we support everybody, we support principals, or even, too, right? And so I remember one of the things that's always been important to me is building that relationship with the principal and the administrator, because, they're going to help me lay the groundwork for whatever the work is that's going to happen, right? But if I heard like chatter about this or that, I would never name names, but I would go to the principal and say, that professional learning, there's a lot of questions. They're not sure about this. And I would not say names. I might say like, well, this primary level or whatever. But I just think that, like you said, that we want to be a pulse for that person, and vice versa. I think, a principal might need a sounding board as a librarian. What do you think? How do you think the teachers, what do you think they need? What are they asking questions about? So there's those kinds of things too. And I keep thinking about what you said about the ones that think that they know it all. I used to tell my kids when they were little, because they're 30 plus now, I would say, the minute you think you know everything, you stop learning. And that's so disappointing when you think there are people there that have that kind of philosophy, because I believe as educators, no matter what you teach, librarian, teacher, even an administrator, like, we need to be the models for learning. We are in a learning institution, so we should be modeling what learning looks like, and so it's just interesting. But yeah, I've heard that. I've heard all kinds of things, about pecking orders and that kind of thing too, even on a school. So it's like, oh my gosh, that kind of like, that kind of thinking is just like baffling to me.
Well, and we really do. I mean, the word that comes to mind is dynamic. Like we know a lot about the building dynamic. We've been able to see, how the personalities clash, how many of them have learned to get along. But also, it was interesting. I'm on our DEI team, and we had to put together some multi sort of across the, we sort of mix up our groups that we were getting into, and in this DEI meeting they said, we need to be able to create these very random groups where nobody is going to be working with anybody else from their department. And we want to mix them up by where they are in the building, because we were going on this activity around the building. And they said, so who among us knows where all of these teachers, where their classrooms are and which ones are in which departments? And my hand went up and I'm like, I'll do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make this. And I had so much fun because everybody else on the team knew just the handful of people in their department. And they had never, in many cases, they had never left their hall that they taught on because they had no reason to learn where other parts of the building, they know how to get from their car to the staff lounge to their room and, the staff restroom. There we go. That's it. And that was it. It's like, we have to appreciate that the unique perspective that we come at is really one that can sort of support a lot of needs in our spaces. When it comes to being a mentor, what are some of the qualities that you have found? Because you do match up your new hires with your, I always say seasoned, our seasoned school librarians, our veteran school librarians. What is the likelihood that this union is going to succeed?
First, I start with a willingness. I never want to voluntold anybody, that's not a good thing. I want people, so I always ask, have you ever thought about being a mentor? I know that when I think about mentoring itself, I think about the 10,000 hours rule with Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if you've ever done the math, but I have. I was like, okay, 10,000 hours. Let's just assume 8-hour workday for a librarian. How long does that take? It's long a calendar, only working like the 40-hour week. And it came to like, depending on the contract, 5.5 to 6 years. And I actually told our librarians that, and one of them said, that's about right. About the 5th year, I felt like, oh, I'm feeling like I got this now. I know what I'm doing. I understand the routine. I know, because when you think about the different roles we have, so many hats, right? So when I'm looking for a mentor, I want to know, like, first, do they have that foundation? Is it strong? Have they been here a while? Do they understand systems within our school district? That kind of thing too, because I think we hire brand new to profession. They're not new to teaching. They at least taught 2 years, some longer, but at least 2 years. More often than not, more. Or they might just be new to our school district, so they have 10 years of librarian experience and teaching. We're teaching instruments, but so there's just going to be more about systems to our school district. So I think a lot about the willingness of the mentor. Do you want to do this? Is this something you're interested in? I've also found, like, are they willing to share? Are they pretty supportive and that kind of thing too? I also know too that when I think about proximity a lot, because we're singletons on a campus, and so we are over 2,000 square miles apart. District. We are so big. And so I have to think about proximity. And so I'm not going to hire somebody that works on the south side with somebody that's on the north side. So who's close in proximity? So we do a lot of virtual stuff, but sometimes that librarian, that new hire, wants to go visit a school, wants to go see their library space. What does your signage look like? That kind of thing too, because there's opportunities to go visit campuses, to go see what a layout looks like and that kind of thing too. I also think about the experience of the person. I also oftentimes find that I have to nudge people into considering. So, and I say that because it's not surprising that we might go to the same people because they just know their stuff, and that's great. But I also try to be super mindful of not overtaxing somebody and not going to the same person all the time because, like, they love it, and I think that's great. But how do we also build capacity in other people to be a mentor? Because we got to that's my goal is like I want to build that skill set in other people. And so usually about year 5, I'm looking at other people and saying, "Have you ever thought about becoming a mentor?" And they're like, "You think I can do it?" And it's kind of funny because it's that whole imposter syndrome, like I don't think they can. And I said, "Well, don't you think? I mean, I feel like you have lots you can share." And so I talk a little and they're like, "Well, okay, I'd be willing to do it," because I think the other piece that I do is to ensure that we're all flowing in the same direction. Communication is super important. So I will say, like, I'm gonna meet with all the new hires on this day, and here's the things we're gonna talk about. And so we'll talk about things, but again, be mindful of how much, but then share that with the mentor so that they know you can follow up, check in with any specific questions. It's definitely an important balance, but I also know that I share what the vision is for like what we want that experience to look like. I really view a mentor mentee opportunity as more like coaching because we know this person is certified and has gone to school and has a degree. And more often than not, that person has the answers, but they're just unsure because the competence thing, they're new. And so I really coach our mentors into positioning themselves as a mentor, and instead of answering all the questions, unless it's something super specific, but just to say, like, what are you thinking? What are the ideas you're thinking about signage? And then saying, like, that's a good idea. Maybe consider these kinds of things. And so that there's this mutual back and forth. I think that's important too. So definitely think about goals and that sort of thing too. I also know that it's important for me to be sure that I coach those mentors into being like leaders by example. I mean, I don't know that I'm gonna select somebody that's never turning things in on time, right? Or isn't mindful about deadlines or things that are due. I also think another important goal is thinking about that mentor being an advocate for that mentee because sometimes they see things that I won't see. I mean, I meet with all of our new hires. I meet with them not as often, but I do meet with them. They may hear of things or see things and might need to whisper in my ear and say, check in on this because I'm hearing about that. So that's important, sharing those kinds of things. But then I think the other thing too is helping mentors understand that the benefits of it, I think is key because I know it feels like a job and it is a job. I mean, right? It's another thing to do. But I also know that when you serve as a mentor, it's also an opportunity to serve as a leader and to pour back into somebody. You're also building relationships with other people. And I think there's just something really incredibly satisfying about knowing that you're giving back to your profession in a way that's going to be lasting.
Well, and let's not forget, this is also part of your evaluation. Am I right? I mean, if you take on a mentorship, you are a leader in your profession, and that has to be somewhere on. I don't know if you're doing Danielson or what evaluation tool you use in Leander, but anytime you show leadership in your profession, that's got to be worth something.
Yes, it is. And so we actually have our own evaluation system that we just implemented, and it's tied some to our state standards, but also some ASL standards. But there is a whole section about collaboration, a whole domain about collaboration. And so, yes, there's collaboration with teachers, but then there's this whole collaboration as a PLC, whether it's as a mentor mentee. But then I think there's also too that whole like participating beyond the inner domain of your library. Are you getting out of your library? And so mentoring is a way to show that because you're working cross campus now with another person. And so definitely fits as something that could be noted on an evaluation.
Well, and depending on the size of your district, I don't want to make any assumptions, but is it that you pair your mentor and your mentee within grade level so that, if you're a high school librarian, new hire, that your mentor is also going to be a high school librarian? Okay. I've never
Yes,
I
I
ever
do.
worked in a situation where I was able to work with another school librarian, but I'm sure it would be lovely.
Yeah, well, and I think because they share similar things. I think an elementary person working with a high school person is going to be a good fit because they have different schedules. They work with departments. One works with grade level. I mean, so it's just different. So it doesn't mean they can't learn from one another because I think there's similar problems, but it's just going to look different.
With the understanding that many rookie school librarians are, in fact, veteran teachers, veteran classroom teachers, how does this impact the kind of rapport that one would have with a mentor? Because oftentimes we're not like fresh out of college, brand new hires. We are actually seasoned teachers who have some years on us, and we went and took that extra step to become school librarians.
So I think it really depends on where that experience is. And so if you're in a middle school situation, the span is going to be smaller because it's grade 6, 7, and 8, right? Whereas like elementary, maybe your experience is primarily in 4th and 5th grades, but in an elementary school, a librarian is going to serve pre-K to 5. So yes, you will have some strengths as with the older grades, but how are we going to navigate managing littles? Because they are their own thing, right? And so understanding like checkout is not going to look the same for a kindergartner as you would for a 5th grader, that kind of thing too. So I think the mentor comes in handy because they will step in and say, um, make some time to meet with your kindergarten teacher so that you can go study the systems and routines that they have so that you're not reinventing something new and you're maybe bringing in some of those systems, right? At a high school campus, it could look like maybe it's a specific field or a specific core or curriculum area, discipline. So I think it depends. I mean, there is a lot to be said for that experience, and so hopefully within the whole range of like say all of high school, typically most of our people are. I've got some mostly language arts, but I've got some social studies, and what I love is that it brings experience in how to relate to those teachers that maybe we don't talk to all the time. So that's always an opportunity too.
So I'm curious to know, when you have a new hire who is coming to Leander and they've been a school librarian, maybe not in your district, but they're coming in as a seasoned school librarian, but they are new to your district. What does that mentorship look like? Because you've got somebody, like a good example, when I got hired into the job I currently am in, I had 14 years of being an elementary librarian. Walking into a high school position, I really could have used the mentorship of a veteran high school librarian. My options were limited to beefing up all the interviews I did that season were all high school focused. Maybe people didn't notice, but I sure was intentional on trying to learn as much as I could from school librarians who were at the high school level because I wasn't going to have a mentor. Have you found it significant to pair up somebody who comes into Leander with library experience, but they're teaching at a different level now?
Sometimes I have to do that, and I think we have to look at that sort of thing. More often than not, I mean, I think it's easier secondary to secondary, so middle school to high school, versus like elementary to high school, right? So the work that has to happen or the support that has to happen really is more about maybe the amount of people you're going to serve or different kind of programs you're going to have. I think you're going to have more programs at a high school level versus maybe middle school. I think the other thing too that I think about is a lot of times the needs are very specific to systems that you're using. So for instance, like if you're like a budget system, I mean, we all know how to balance and reconcile budgets, but what is the system that you input purchase orders in? Or are you allowed to use credit cards or not allowed to use credit cards? What are the approved vendors? It's going to look different if you're in one school versus another. So a lot of it is more that education of those specific things, maybe deadlines and timelines, or it could even be processes around the digital approval process. Because some people think, oh, I can use any, website and just put all the kids' names in. Nope. We got rules for that. So there's a lot to think about. But one of the things that I do at the beginning of the year when I have new hires is I have my agenda of what I'm going to go through. But the first thing that I have all of our new hires do is jot down all of their questions on a Padlet. I mean, all of them. I give them like 20 minutes and go get coffee, whatever, and just let them put them down. And then we sort them so I can see like, these are budget questions. These are collection development questions. These are whatever, right? And then as we go through our learning, they're sitting in and one is like a person or two was jotting down the answer. And then I know that I'm covering what I need, but then I also know that I'm covering the things that are burning questions for them. I might even say, we're not going to do that part right now. We're going to do this later. For instance, I am not a sit and get person. I hate to just like be talked to the whole time. I want to do stuff. So when we're talking about saying purchasing of things for new people, new hires, I will say, I want you to go get a list ready of books you want to purchase on your vendor site because we're going to have a whole meeting about creating a purchase order and you're going to have your list ready. We're going to do it too. You're going to watch me and then I'm going to watch you. And that way we're learning at the same time. So trying to make it really efficient because again, we're learning from the fire hydrant, right? They're trying to learn it all. It's just too hard. And so they're not going to get it all. And retention is so important. I also think about breaking down the things that we need to know. I'm not going to talk to them about traveling to a conference in September when the conference is not till April, right? So I'm going to wait and say, that's something we'll talk about it and I'll bring it up in November or December, right? When we're starting to get ready. So I just try to like break out what are the big ideas and we slowly, progressively get through all of them. And then, of course, the mentor's there in place to also to support and answer their just-in-time kind of questions.
So, in your opinion, what is the duration of a mentor-mentee relationship or a partnership? Do the mentees graduate, to someday themselves, be mentors?
Oh, yeah.
I think you want to you want to plan for the success of your program such that it's no longer needed, and yet you are building that network of support.
Right. So, there's various support systems in place. And so, like I said, I talk to them directly, but they also have their mentor. The first year is, I think, the biggest year. I have a whole schedule about how often to communicate the first week of school, the second week, the first month, and beyond, right? But then also, and I even have like a chat for just-in-time chat for like, how's it going? Or somebody will, because I think, again, there's something about I have an all librarians chat for like all 45, but then I have just elementary, just middle school, just high school. So they've got their specific conversations. But then I have my first year hires because I think it's overwhelming to expect somebody to say, how do you do? And then everybody pounces, right? So versus I've got this chat for 5 people and they say, can you remind me where so-and-so is? Absolutely. It's done, right? It's smaller, it's just in time, and like I tell everybody, it's inevitably somebody's gonna say, "I was just thinking of the same thing. Thanks for asking that." And then as far as graduating, the first year is the biggest year. I do move my first year hires to what I call a second year, and then we kind of go back. So I keep people kind of in a smaller chat for 3 years. But it's interesting because I just tapped it. I just posted something in the 3-year people, nobody responded. I was like, and I thought that's good because I think that's the goal, right? Because they feel like they're fully integrated. And so I think it's going to look different for everybody. The other thing that I do too is, I allow, I'll meet with anybody, as often as you need to. Preferably, I want to meet with a librarian at least twice a year. More often than not, and I say twice a year, like for 15, 20 minutes where we're just talking about what's going on in your world, that kind of thing. And it doesn't matter what, first year, 10th year, whatever, checking in, because I think it's in those just-in-time conversations that you learn, right? But it's especially important for the first year hires because more often than not, they want to do everything. And I have this phrase that I say to our first year hires, you have to go slow to go fast. And so I would like for you to think of those 2 or 3 things you want to focus on, do them really, really well, And then next year you do those 3 things, but maybe you add 1 or two more things, right? I don't believe in doing all the things and it's like, okay. I feel I tell librarians too, and anybody, like, you have one time to make a good, strong first impression. And that impression, whether it's a student, a teacher, like, that's lasting. And it takes, like, I think they said 10 interactions to change that. So if it's bad. So you really want to be mindful of, like, how you're presenting yourself, how you're sharing a lesson, like, especially with somebody that doesn't know you. So we talk about those kinds of things so that people understand that, relationship building is important. So focus on that, your first year, because you could be doing all these fabulous things, all these great programs, but if nobody's coming, what's the point? So, I mean, there's a lot of, like, what I would say, like, sidebar kind of coaching sort of things that's not the stuff that they teach you in library school, but it's important advice so that they remember how they can be a meaningful extension of the school.
You've given us so many things to think on. I love this idea of having these very specific chats because you are creating a safe space for these conversations because I think that one of the things that really does impair anyone's ability to be vulnerable is that you don't want to feel stupid or judged by the people who know everything. And there's always going to be those people in the conversation. But if people can safely navigate a space where they are with other people who not only will not be judging them, they will likely have the same questions as well. I think that's genius. I love that. Where was my chat when I don't think, and I'm not lying when I say I did not come up for air for 5 years.
Well, and I hear what you're saying. I think about when I started back in 2000, like, there was no social media where I could say, does anybody know how to blah, blah, blah? I'm looking for a title for this topic. I mean, that just didn't exist. And so when I think about all the blogs that are out there or the great, like, library leaders, I think about Jennifer Lagarde, who has great resources about, weeding, or, like, what a treasure trove, right? If you take the time to go out and look and search for those things, because, I mean, I'm not going to say that a mentor knows everything. I mean, they don't, and they might know a lot, but I also think too, there's just something about connecting with other librarians, whether it's through social media for, like, how they do a program, or the little unique ideas they get to on signage, or, I mean, there's just so many things, right? So that there's just this plethora of ideas. And so if somebody were to say, I just don't know what to do, I would be saying, what? Like, why? Because we're librarians, right? We know how to search for things. And just imagine, if you search a topic like, elementary programs on XYZ, like, something's going to come up, right? So what a great time to be a librarian with, like, so many ideas too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's shift our focus to retaining these school librarians, which you have put so much thought into training in the first place. We are well aware that we are most likely to lose those aspiring educators in the first 5 years that they're in the classroom. And I've seen it firsthand. It is absolutely devastating to see these young people who have these amazing aspirations of succeeding in the classroom, only to feel absolutely just like they're hitting a brick wall because it is not what they expected it to be. They don't feel supported. When it comes to making sure that we retain those school librarians, what have you found needs to happen to make sure that we are not losing our school librarians who are right now in the field?
So I think, I feel like it's just so important to kind of just have those conversations about how it's going. Nobody wants to pour into a person for a year and then, like, boom, they're leaving, right? For me, whenever somebody says I'm thinking about leaving, or I'm gonna leave, I mean, every situation's unique and different, and so, but I always ask questions. Everything okay? Is there a problem? More often than not, it's like, my husband's moving, or I'm getting a transfer or whatever those things are. And that's different. That's going to happen. But in terms of retention, I think there's opportunity in asking the questions because you might find out. Like I remember when I had a person email me and say, can you be a reference for me? And she just started. She's this fabulous librarian from New York, opened a new school, and she was just amazing, did an incredible job. And she's like, and I said, where are you going? And she's like, this commute is too far for me. I mean, because she was going to the farthest most point, and she was in South Austin. Well, that is, an hour on the road every day, and that's not fun. And then I said to her, I said, oh my gosh, I said, I totally understand. And I said, this is not official yet, but I'm hearing that I'm going to have a job open on the South Side. Is that an opportunity that you might consider? She's like, oh my God, tell me. And so we ended up keeping her. And I don't think if all I had said is, sure, send me the information, I don't know that I would have discovered that. So it's important to like ask more questions and try to get to the root of what's going on in terms of like why a person's thinking about leaving. I mean, everybody's in different places. Sometimes I hear that things aren't going too well in terms of relationship between a principal and a librarian. Well, so I want to learn more, and maybe a move is a good idea, but maybe they're leaving that campus. Maybe they're going somewhere else. And so helping with that, but I think just again, delving into things, sometimes there just isn't a good fit. And I mean, I'm of the thought a person has to take care of themselves. And if they need to go somewhere else, I'm not going to stop that. But I always tell people that when I invest if you're on my team, I invest in you more than just like you're just working on my district. I'm investing in a relationship, and I'll say, well, you keep spreading the good word in XYZ city. I mean, when I work with incredible administrators, principals, and they go somewhere else, I welcome them when they come to our school district. And when they get a new job, I say, best wishes. If you don't forget to spread the good word about libraries. And if you need any support, let me know. Like I'm invested in people as a relationship. And so, again, back to the whole retention thing, though, I think every situation is different. And so stopping to kind of listen and explore and understand might help. I think sometimes that, like I had a conversation with somebody about maybe that was thinking about retiring and asking questions about why and what's going on, and maybe it's the right time. And this person ended up deciding, you know what, I think I'm going to wait 1 more year because I do love what I'm doing. And so that's beyond more, that's not so much coaching as it's much in investing in some time to talk with that person, to learn what the circumstances that are making them think about that. Is there a challenge? Is there something going on that they need some support because there's maybe too many people and not enough support for the librarian? So I think they're all opportunities. And so, like I said, every situation is unique. I definitely want people to stay. And I know that this isn't the case everywhere, but more often than not, I hear this is a place that we want to come work because we hear great things. And I think that some of that's reputation of our school district too. So I'm very grateful for that, but I know that that's not necessarily the case everywhere.
Yeah, I think this is where school librarians really owe it to our staff to be those listeners. We learn so much by paying attention to the body language and what we hear and what we observe. And, we see so many people coming and going through our space because it's a resource that's used by many.
Yep.
And what we overhear is so telling. I fully expect my students to be counting down the days to our next break. I fully expect our students to be counting down the hours until the day is over. I should not hear that from our teachers. Like that, our teachers shouldn't be counting down the days, like the students. I mean, we are in the schools because we want to be. The students are there because they have to be. And I think about when I hear things that sound like you are sounding way more like our students. I would never have this conversation, but when I'm thinking, when
that make you like your ears go, that sounds a little bitter, or that sounds a little,
you sound jaded. You sound like you're done. You sound like you've checked out. You're just taking up oxygen in this building. What is going on? And in some cases, you don't want to, if somebody is ready to leave, you do not want to be the person who is like, no, here. But I do think there's something to be said for being very tuned in to what you hear and what you see, because oftentimes those signals of burnout are, they really do more resemble our students who really just are just excited to be done and they can't wait. And, we, of course, we're all excited for summer vacation, but you should not be thinking about the summer in February.
Right. I tell our librarians, and anybody, like, this is good advice for anybody, that in many ways we should be anthropologists and we should study, we should watch, because I think there's a lot to be learned by watching, by learning, by listening. You might see a student that's sitting by themselves quite often, and you might be the only person that says, "Hi, how's your day going?" And that could make such a difference. When I see a librarian that's struggling, maybe it's somebody that's been, I don't know, 30 years and struggling with keeping up with the technology and what, I'm going to check in, ask questions, and maybe inevitably I'm going to hear, I'm feeling really overwhelmed and I'm debating whether it's time or not. What are your thoughts? And I'm not telling people to leave, but I'm just saying, maybe have you considered writing, pros and cons, like why should I stay? Why should I go? I just try to coach people in thinking about all the considerations, because I'm not going to make that decision for them. They have to, but I also know too that those are tough conversations, but sometimes talking things out with somebody else might offer the opportunity for ideas for them to figure something out on their own. I think you need to communicate, want to talk. We don't know how to, solve all problems, but if we can be that friend to a person and help them kind of navigate resources on how to make a decision, I mean, hey.
Well, and friends, shameless plug, I do have a playlist, and one of the playlists is called Overcoming Obstacles. And it is the longest playlist that we have because there are so many shared struggles that people have joined me for a conversation. We have talked about something, and overcoming obstacles it's not just a rant. It's not just a vent. It's about how this particular individual had a challenge, a struggle, and were able to find to resolve that issue in such a way that did not necessarily involve them leaving the profession or leaving their school, but finding a solution that was going to work for both them and their administrators and their school community. And so, I encourage anybody, if you're feeling, I think it's very easy to feel alone when you are struggling. And a listening community is still a community. And I have found that when people are generous and talk about how they overcame the obstacles that they had in their particular workspace, oftentimes that is enough reassurance to people to hear, oh, well, here are people who solved similar problems that I had, and here's how they were able to find a solution that worked for them. And it's never going to be a perfect fit. But friends, when you reach out and start to build that network, and for me, it's always virtual. My network is 100%. My PLN is 100% virtual because there aren't any school librarians in my district. So, and I don't have a district coordinator like Becky. We get to have a lovely conversation tonight, and I'm always glad when our paths cross. But it is about manufacturing a support network, which can be remote. And in this case, I don't have one of those convenient chats, but I made one up with a bunch of people who regularly check in on one another. And we float ideas, we float problems, and when you realize the likelihood of us seeing each other in person is probably going to be St. Louis in October. That's the next best chance I have. It's February, and I'm already making plans for October.
Same. Well, and I want to say that, and to add to that, is that there's something about sharing a load with somebody else. When you're carrying a burden on your own, it can feel very overwhelming, and I'm assuming that it would be, say, negative. When you share it with somebody, it lightens the load just a little bit. And then you never know, through that interaction, there could be some problem solving that happens. And have you thought about this? And have you thought about, and I think, again, we can get so in our heads that just talking about it is somewhat of a relief, but you never know that sharing could lead to some potential ideas on how to solve the problem. or maybe it goes away and all is well, but at least you weren't carrying that on your own. So,
Well,
but yes, I'm definitely excited about St. Louis.
oh my gosh, absolutely. Well, and friends, I've been very forthcoming about the origin story of this podcast, but it has everything to do with the fact that I got really fired up, and having conversations with myself in the driveway was not a good solution. Trying to find a solution over the conversation at the dinner table also was not working for my family, because they did not want to hear about my of the obstacles and struggles I had at work. And I was told to seek out people who might be interested or want to talk about what it's like to be a school librarian. And that's very hard when there aren't many of us around here. But, I'm so grateful. Becky, you are amazing. I'm grateful for your time and your leadership, because it is an enormous commitment on your part to be the president of our national organization. We have ALA Annual coming up in a few months, as well as, this is the year for AASL. We have in October, AASL 25. Would you like to pass along any, important information, anything that you might want to reach your intended audience?
I'd love to. So I do want to share that registration for AASL 25 in St. Louis is open. And so you can register through the end of February and save $90 if you put in the code AASL90. And I can share the link so that you can post that on the show notes. But people can register now. You don't have to pay now, but you have through the beginning of October to pay, so that if you need to wait until the new budget year, you can save $90 on your registration. Also, I hope that your listeners are considering submitting a proposal. We've got concurrent session proposals open. If you are in library, if you're in the university doing research, you can submit a research empowering practice session. And then, of course, we are going to have like idea labs and poster presentations. So the poster presentation and idea labs are due July 1st. If you want to submit a concurrent session proposal or a research session, that is due March the 1st. So yeah, it's coming to the wire here. We're almost at the end of February, so we definitely want to get those turned in. And I think the only other thing I want to share is that we have been having some AASL gatherings every month. So we are going to be having another gathering in March. And so if you just Google AASL gatherings, you can go see the different things that we've done. We actually did a session this past month here in February on getting engaged with AASL and, working as a leader. In January, we had somebody from ALA talk about writing an op-ed and kind of giving you some tips and templates on how to do that. We've had Joyce Valenza on, different topics. And so it's been really great to see what used to be our town hall turn into our ASL gathering. So there's some learning, but then we have people sharing and answering and answering questions and that kind of thing too. So lots going on. But yeah, definitely hope that we see everybody in St. Louis. I'm excited.
Absolutely.
Feels like we were in Tampa yesterday.
Well, and I'm going to tell you right now, friends, I loved SLJ. I loved SLJ Summit. That was absolutely fun. But I'm going to tell you right now, and I've gone to a couple ALAs, Chicago, San Diego. I'm going to be there in Philly. But my favorite conference is AASL. And I remember going to Salt Lake, and that was in 21. And I remember the first thing I asked to somebody who knew, I was talking to Jillian Rudez, and I said, why isn't this every year? I was like, because this is the conference I want to go to every year. And friends, so when I know why it's a ridiculous amount of work. It is so much work to put on AASL annual. So we have it every other year. This year it is in St. Louis, and it's held every other year. So it really is on the calendar because it is truly my most favorite conference of all time. Becky Calzada, I am so excited for you. You've got an exciting spring planned, a busy spring planned, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you in the coming months.
Sounds great. Thanks for the chance to share.
And you know what? I don't want to let you go. Please let us know how we can find you, because this has been really exciting. For a while there, we were all sort of down on X and feeling rather abandoned by that platform. But tell us, where can we find you on social media?
So you can find me on Bluesky. So for AASL, you can look for at AASL PRES.BSKY.social. But my personal Bluesky is at becalzada.bsky.social.
And friends, we'll put the links in the show notes to both of those profiles. Absolutely. Yes, I'm very optimistic about Bluesky already.
Same.
And
we've got to join a chat. I know Jennifer Lagarde's been doing a couple of chats with a couple other people, so that's good.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like the way it used to be, which I love, sharing and engaging with one another. So.
Well, and I'm very excited because in March, I have a scheduled interview with Heather Turner.
Oh, nice.
And yes. And so I'm very excited about Bluesky. And it's going to be a whole episode on how school librarians can use Bluesky to build that virtual PLN.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for the opportunity. It's been just great to visit with you, Amy, and I'm looking forward to connecting with others.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a fantastic spring, and I'll see you in the summer.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Friends, if you are curious to know how often your state and school librarians have been featured on the podcast, then check out the link in today's show notes for the search by title, guest, and location. My goal is to showcase school librarians from all 50 states and around the world. Take a look at the FAQs linked in today's show notes to answer all your questions about recording an episode and reach out. Make 2025 the year that you are a guest on the podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. Visit Learnix.com to learn more and schedule a demo. Enjoy Learnix for the remainder of the year at half the price. And if you mention that you heard about Learnix on School Librarians United, you will receive 20% off your subscription. The topic of our next episode will be Librarians Building Libraries, and my conversation with Tom Bober, Amanda Jones, and Andrea Trudeau. I hope you will tune in.